This is the press release that we released yesterday for the Foundation for White Wellbeing. I'm going to read that. This press release concerns Zarutska, and I have it here. The Foundation for White Wellbeing condemns the racially motivated murder of Irina Zarutska, calls for justice and an end to anti-white violence. There's a lot here to really unpack. We won't be going through all of it, but what's important to understand is that the lens of Go Free is true and perfect throughout the totality, understanding everything in a way without a variation, without having to say that the formula has to be changed in this way or that way to understand, perfectly retrodicting, predicting. Charlotte, North Carolina, the Foundation for White Wellbeing expresses its profound outrage and sorrow over the horrific murder of a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee, Irina Zarutska. On August 22, 2025, Ms. Zarutska was brutally stabbed to death in a vicious anti-white attack aboard a Charlotte area transit system train, an incident captured on video that has since sparked widespread public outcry and debate. Tragically, Irina died alone, sobbing and afraid, abandoned by bystanders who failed to intervene, both in the attack, but also intervene in her death throes, her last moments of life. The suspect and career criminal, 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown Jr., has been charged with first-degree murder by the U.S. Justice Department, with federal charges now making him eligible for the death penalty. Graphic footage released by the transit system shows the anti-white assailant attacking Ms. Zarutska from behind, stabbing her in the throat as she sat quietly. Despite reportedly saying, "I got that white girl," as he walked away, Ms. Zarutska's blood copiously dripping from his knife in hand, no one stepped forward to subdue him or to be with her during her final moments of life. This heinous act, widely circulated on social media platforms such as X, has been described by Charlotte's mayor as a tragic failure by the courts and magistrates, highlighting systemic issues that allowed the suspect's prior criminal behavior to go unaddressed, a consequence of the white erasure of white norms in policing and the justice system. Important to mention, because so many conservative people, good folks, will stop there and say, we just need to address these activist judges. We just need to address the chief of police. We just need to... No, none of that's going to work. None of it. Not until you address the social morality. It's the social morality that white erases our norms from policing, from justice. It's the social morality that white erases competent white males from these roles that are then awarded to anybody who is not a competent white male, self-hating, anti-white, competent white male. The Foundation views this incident as a stark example of the rising tide of anti-white violence, which stems from the incessant dehumanization and vilification of whites by the media and educational systems. I'm going to read it again. I've been saying this for decades in the white sympathetic sphere, and the white sympathetic sphere has chosen to ignore, to ostracize, to kill me with silence. The Foundation views this incident as a stark example of the rising tide of anti-white violence, which stems from the incessant dehumanization and vilification of whites by the media and educational systems. Ms. Zarutska's animalistic murder and her solitary terror as her life slipped away is a direct consequence of this anti-white dehumanization and vilification. Why is it that the white sympathetic sphere ostracizes me for that argument? kills me with silence. Well, the explicit or otherwise racial aware or willing to talk about race, they don't get to demonize non-white races when we're talking about that. The focus is on the white race, how we're being victimized. The implicit white sympathetics, the conservatives who don't want to talk about race, well, you're talking about race there. You're talking about white people being vilified as a group. That's immoral to talk about that. You're talking about the white race being victimized because they're white. That's immoral. If you stand up for white people as a group rather than individuals, then you are immoral by the social morality, that benchmark, which we know here is the anti-white immoral imperative. As noted by many, the lack of media coverage and public action highlights a troubling bias that fails to address hate crimes targeting white individuals and Western kind at large. Because this was an anti-white attack, the foundation calls on U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi to apply additional hate crime charges to ensure the full weight of the laws brought to bear on this case. More importantly, not just ensure that the full weight of the law is brought to bear, but to be symbolic, to say you cannot victimize white people on the basis of them being white. And if it's not done, why isn't it done? And I just answered that right before reading that paragraph. According to data and commentary shared online, anti-white bias and hate constitute a significant portion of hate crime motivations. Yet such incidents often receive inadequate attention or response from authorities and media outlets. We condemn the local and state leaders in North Carolina, such as Charlotte Mayor V. Lyles, as well as those in the media, for their silence or tepid response to this anti-white attack. An attack we know would be addressed differently if the races were reversed. Why would it be addressed differently? This is where you have so many conservatives coming in and saying, that's because it's the narrative. The narrative, but what is the narrative? What is it? Why can't you say it? Irina Zarutska, a young woman seeking a new life in America, was a victim of a preventable tragedy rooted in anti-white racial hatred and judicial negligence. The indifference of bystanders who left her to die alone, sobbing and afraid, amplifies the urgency of this crisis, a crisis engendered by anti-whiteism. Why didn't the people help her? She's been dehumanized. The white race is dehumanized. That's why they did not help her. You're going to tell me anti-non-white crowd that hasn't achieved a scintilla of success for the white race, you're going to say they didn't help her because they're black or non-white otherwise? Useless. Useless. Absolutely useless to say that. Why? Because it doesn't engender the creation of a people out of our deracinated race. It keeps us stymied in this selfish individualism. Why didn't they help? Because the white race is dehumanized by anti-whites, not because they're black or whatever other non-white races they were. The foundation stands in solidarity with her family and all those affected by this loss, urging immediate action to ensure justice is served. We call for the swift application of the death penalty in this case, as advocated by community leaders and echoed in public sentiment on X, to send a clear message that such acts of anti-white violence and anti-whiteism will not be tolerated. And we call for the white race to focus on our people and the various forms of victimization we suffer on a daily basis. Moreover, the Foundation for White Wellbeing renews its commitment to advancing white well-being and education through the promotion of the Go Free method, a psychological defense for the psychological warfare waged against Western kind. We advocate for systemic reforms to protect vulnerable populations, including white refugees, from racially motivated crimes. This includes holding accountable those judicial systems that repeatedly fail to protect public safety, as highlighted by North Carolina Representative Brendan Jones and other commentators. We invite the public, policymakers, and media to join us in condemning this act of anti-white violence and supporting initiatives to end anti-whiteism. For more information or to contribute to our mission, please visit thefoundationforwhitewellbeing.org. I want to ask you, if you're hearing me for the first time, maybe live, probably in replay, probably from some smart clip that has been made, let me ask you, what I just read to you, would you like to have a spokesman, spokespeople speaking like this to public officials? Would you like to have them interviewed on different channels, on mass media, or at least in the alternative media? Would you like to have that happen? Because if you would, then you're going to have to get behind the work that we're doing here. None of these other endeavors are going to achieve that. Would you like to have the moral wherewithal and high ground? Would you like to have clips with verbiage like this that you can show friends and colleagues and lovers and children and parents and whatever? Then you're going to have to get involved in this endeavor. You're going to have to participate. These main strategies, these two main strategies of complaining about non-whites and turning everything into an abstraction, have failed us. End of conversation. We also have a petition that the great Biospirit of the West put together, and it is linked underneath of the press release on my Twitter account. Please head on over there. I'll be signing the petition. If you can sign the petition. I don't know about this particular entity that we are using. If you're worried about your IP being captured, you can try various alternatives to logging into the site and sharing your information to sign this petition, Justice for Irina Zarutska. Where does this all begin? Where does the anti-whiteism begin? Well, it's in every aspect of this story, as it is in the lives of all white people. You know, in Ukraine, they were making statements in the news and over in Ukraine about Irina here. And they were talking about how wonderful anti-whiteism is in Ukraine, in the midst of a war. Because anti-whiteism is everywhere. It exists in the void that is left by us not being a people, a single people with many countries, a single people with many languages, a single people with various hues of Western civilization. In the absence of that peoplehood, there breeds anti-whiteism. There is no group that you can get rid of to prevent that from growing there, to prevent that disease, that cancer. Because where that void exists, it will be filled by its antithesis. I'm sorry you can't get it. I'm sorry you didn't think of it first, I guess. But that's the reality. You need to come out of whatever is holding you back. Whatever hatred for some other group, whatever misguided notions that you've received, whatever jealousy you might have for me personally. I know so many people like to endorse thinkers, problem solvers, when those thinkers or problem solvers are effete or emaciated or exiguous. That's not real leadership for Western kind. We were never led by degenerate, pathetic cripples. We were never led by cowards. We were never led by the ignominious. We were always led by heroes. Not only were our heroes fighters, but they were thinkers. And that's a rare combination. And that's why when they paid their dues, that's why when such a rare combination with their acts earned that position, the rest of the white population said that is the rightful leadership. So anti-whiteism, everywhere you turn, the anti-white narrative. As a consequence, being claimed here, I know there was some claims before and then they were reeled in, but it appears to be being claimed again, in this instance by Henrik Palmgren, that yes, indeed, Irina was anti-white. Did you expect her to be anything else? A beautiful young white female. She could have been hideous. Young white female taught the morality, that social morality. Did you expect her to be anything else? How do you prevent young white females, young white males from becoming anti-white? You inoculate them with the Go Free dialogic. It's very simple. It's really straightforward. I made it completely accessible, not in the least bit arcane. Apparently, Henrik writes, it's real. Irina Zarutska had Black Lives Matter and I Can't Breathe written on a chalkboard hanging on her door to her room. The photograph is actually on her funeral page posted by the family. This is not a surprise. BLM is the default and good moral position. What is that morality, Henrik? I think it's as much as I like Henrik, it's very curious that I speak about this forever and can articulate this in a way that improves people's lives. He says, which just shows you that it doesn't matter if you support blacks or are pro BLM or you are, quote, anti-racist and anti-white. They hate you anyway. Yes, white people can never be anti-white enough. Been saying that for over 20 years, every bit of over 20 years. I've been teaching this. I've been giving speeches in meetings. Irina doesn't deserve what happened to her. Blame those guilty of injecting this anti-white poison into the minds of young girls and boys. Well, yes and no. Yes, it's anti-whites, those who are perpetuating this, but Irina was an adult in her early 20s and no doubt had participated in effectuating and villainy signaling anti-whiteism in the world. She has agency. So yes, in part, she's not to blame because she was poisoned with anti-whiteism, but in part, she is to blame for being a participant and clearly expounding on anti-whiteism. I have a hunch that so many, and maybe not Henrik himself, but so many in his audience would say, yes, blame those guilty of injecting this anti-white poison, the Jews. A non-starter. Yes, there are anti-white Jews. Yes, there are anti-white blacks. None of that matters if you want to recapture our destiny. What matters is the focus on us. If we are arresting our victimization and becoming a people thereby in the process, then no one can victimize us, whether they're Jewish anti-white or black anti-white or what have you. Doesn't matter. Decades of anti-racism activism, cultural Marxism, and anti-whiteness, he writes. Anti-whiteness. Whiteness is a mean pathogen created by Noel Ignatieff, a vehement anti-white that called for the extermination of the white race, the biological white erasure of us. We in this community never use the concepts given us by our victimizers. We don't produce whiteness. If you're producing whiteness, see the doctor. Media academics, including the activist judges, and words matter, by the way. Just for those who are going to say, well, what is it? I know exactly. I know what you mean, though. No, words matter. Why? Because your 5% of your life that you're using your conscious mind for is irrelevant relative to the 95% of your life that the subconscious is living your life. So words and concepts matter. They are the magic of psychological warfare. But yeah, just repeat what I said elsewhere, take credit for it, and you'll get interviewed. Media academics, including activist judges and DAs, that let this anti-white piece of shit out on the streets are the ones responsible. They are indeed part of the responsibility of what led to her slaughter. Now, the poisoning of her mind with anti-whiteism also caused her, as I speculated accurately, again, what a big surprise, to put her back to a non-white male. White females, white males for that matter, should not be putting our backs to non-white people and not be putting our backs to any whites who look radically anti-white. Why is that? Because such a high percentage of non-white people are anti-white. Here's the thing, though. I hate more than anything in the world the conversation about who's a good one and who's not a good one. I don't want to talk about blacks and what they are and who are the good ones and who are the bad ones. I want to talk about us and protecting our people. So, as a consequence of anti-whiteism, an ideology that victimizes us, all of these non-white people are angelized. The scary thing is that Irina Zarutska, hearing me talk about white well-being, would probably call me a racist and then sit with her back to a scraggly looking black male on a subway train. Where were her family members concerned about her safety? Why didn't they teach Irina to not put her back to non-white males? Because they too are poisoned with anti-whiteism. That would be immoral. if your family, good white people from the past, probably in so many words, intimated or outright said, this area is not good, that area is not good. And they did it because they love you. They didn't do it because they hate the other group. So anyone exhorting you to tell your loved ones to not turn your back to this or that or not live in this area because it's black or it's Hispanic or it's whatever, anybody telling you that is steering you down the path of perdition, the path of focusing on the other when you don't have a people. Should she leave? Should she have been smart enough to see through the lies by now? Well, coming from Ukraine, I'm sure she did everything she could to fit in. So conforming to the cultural norms. So what about our cultural norms? Is it not a powerful tool to talk about our cultural norms being white erased, to own our norms so that we will defend them and fight for them as our very being? Why am I not talked to on a regular basis? Why am I not bungeed in here and there on a regular basis to talk about these things? This is why cultural norms need to change. What cultural norms? To whose cultural norms must they change? In a multiracial society with so much destabilization and grievances, being so-called racist might literally save your life. God. Sorry, Henrik, that's dumb. You're not the villain in our victimizer's story to preserve yourself. You are the hero in ours. You are white positive. And when you're white positive, you're cognizant of what everyone around you has been taught about the white race, of how they want to victimize you. Being racist will save your life. Being a hero of the white race will save your life. What sounds better to you, both physically, mentally, spiritually? What sounds better? I'll be your racist. I'll be your villain. Sorry, not passing marks from me, but that's all right because I'm not a regular guest. I'm not putting anything in jeopardy here. Of course, you know the news. Irina Zarutska escapes war-torn Ukraine, comes to the United States, is infected with anti-whiteism, has a distorted view of non-white people as a consequence of the anti-white narrative that they're all good, they're all moral. Why does she have that view? Well, she's experienced it in entertainment, where the vast majority of her mind and thinking, where she lives her life, can't know fiction from reality, has been with so many black males suffering in movie after movie that her mind thinks was real, the subconscious. She's been with them when they're crying, when they're just trying to be understood, when all of these evil white people around them were holding them down, were persecuting and keeping them back. She's been in the media, in the entertainment media, in the advertisement media, where she's learned that the safest place she can be, the happiest place she can be, is with a black male. And that anything said to the contrary is a consequence of the evil white race. A manipulation of the data, Jared Taylor. This is what they think of your data. Lies, manipulation, a false telling, a bad interpretation. So infected with these notions, She sits down with her back to this animal, to this anti-white animal, biospiritually incompatible with the white race and Western civilization. Biospiritually incompatible. Biospiritual, another one of those terms that are odd words that have been complained about, that I'm sure when somebody else uses it around this particular person, he'll end up giving it a like to. She gets on the train, she sits down, and within no time at all, a vehemently anti-white savage stabs her in the throat and says he got that white girl twice on the audio. He's arrested and charged and being held. CNN's Van Jones lies about the murderer of Irina Zarutska, writes Zaipula, and says the word white was never mentioned by anyone except Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated today by an anti-white monster. You know what's interesting is that Van Jones, well, he should be called an anti-white. He clearly is an anti-white. He should be, his accounts should be deluged with people calling him as a vicious anti-white pig. He should be deluged with this. You know, Zaipula, the murderer, the anti-white terrorist, doesn't have to say the word white because this context is anti-white. Every single attack on white people, every single injury, every single, even a mark down on your test that shouldn't have been marked down, if you're white, can be understood and safely concluded to be anti-white. You don't have to have a standard where the anti-white says, I did this because they are white. When you live in an anti-white narrative where white people are the villains, it outrages me and shocks me that the white race is so stupid and so jealous that they can't see me and the work that we do here, and they can't see you, the champions of white well-being, and see how we articulate this and witness the power of that articulation and see the logic and reasonableness of it and how easily it can be used in the battle of ideas, and then reject us. You can literally look at the success of Jews where in an environment where no credible people are anti-Jew. No credible sources are anti-Jew. No credible or meaningful entities are anti-Jew. No powerful entities with any power at all and of sound mind are anti-Jew. Only anonymous trolls and otherwise vagabond miscreants are anti-Jew. There's no anti-Jew narrative that we live under. There is no tangible anti-Jewism from dawn till dusk. But the Jews have no problem articulating the winning strategy. Only the white race can't do it. The Jews have no problem coming out and saying any Jew that's harmed is a consequence of powerless, anonymous trolls, is a consequence of before the internet, is a consequence of trailer living malefactors saying anti-Jew things. And so therefore, there is this seething, this bubbling anti-Jewism in the West. So any Jew that gets harmed, it's a consequence of that. Any harm inflicted on a Jew, it's a consequence of that. There isn't a scintilla of reality to that. And at the same time, there is Jupiter-level anti-whiteism across the West. Jupiter level. And what happens? A champion for the white race stands up and says, I have a formula. It's reasonable. It's logical. It follows the edicts of reason. It produces results, the exact results that it seeks to produce. And what does the white race do? Shun, ignore, kill with silence. You want someone to blame. It ain't Jews. It ain't Jews. You want someone to blame. You start looking in the mirror. You start looking at these white content creators. You start wondering why we can't come together, why they won't acknowledge and give voice to those who apply the tools that succeed. So you don't need to say, Zaipula, you don't need to say, he said white. We don't need to know exactly all the days of his life and what's in his innermost heart, because we know the context is anti-white. If any white person is targeted, the onus is on the opposition to prove that it's not anti-white, not on us to prove that it is. But don't talk to me. Don't be empowered by me. We'll just do it here in this community here. And then as this community grows and you come begging, you'll get the same response that you gave me. The killer said twice, I got the white girl. Doesn't matter. Instead of calling 911, passengers took out their cell phones and recorded Irina Zarutska bleeding to death on the floor. What's the context? Anti-whiteism. Where did these people grow up and learn about the world? They grew up within the anti-white narrative. They're living in the anti-white narrative. She is a member of a browbeaten and dehumanized race of people. Doesn't matter what happens to her. Her life is irrelevant. She can never be anti-white enough. And so it's more important to videotape her bleeding out, bleeding to death on the floor. That's why this happened. That's why they filmed it rather than coming to her aid. How did the Charlotte mayor, V. Lyles, ripped over anti-white response demanding compassion for madman accused of slaughtering Ukrainian refugee? So the anti-white, non-white mayor, there she is, called for compassion for the anti-white animal that butchered this tiny white female. How do you get this? How are you going to remedy it? Do you want to complain about her being black or half black or whatever? Do you want to say, we need segregation when you can't effectuate segregation? Do you need to hear a content creator say, we need segregation when he or she can't effectuate segregation? How about you grow up? How about you stop being a child? When you decide you're ready to make a difference in the world, then go free is the way to go. Charlotte Mayor Lyles is coming under fire for her anti-white comments. And by the way, what you're seeing me do there, it says woke. This is one of the exercises you do in the Go Free practice. You translate anti-white speech into our speech. You have to train your mind. Calling for compassion for the deranged vagrant who is accused of viciously murdering a Ukrainian refugee. Quote, this is a tragic situation that sheds light on problems with society safety nets. An abstraction. The mayor is anti-white. She was elected by anti-whites. She deflects from the obvious anti-whiteism to an abstraction, kind of like so many cuck content creators. Sad to say that one of them, thanks to the good work of this community, Charlie Kirk, who was standing up and finally calling it out as anti-white and anti-whiteism, has been assassinated today. So she deflects into an abstraction. You need to do, and the abstraction is what? The abstraction is always going to be anti-white in its evaluation of the world and the calls, the prescription for what needs to be done. You white people haven't done enough for blacks in this case. You haven't done enough. You need to create more safety nets for them. So it's your fault, white race, because you didn't create these safety nets or enough of them. And now it's your duty to create these safety nets or more of them. Do you see how this works? Do you see how feckless it's going to be to enter the conversation and say, yeah, but she's black? Do you see how feckless it's going to be to get into this conversation with this anti-white mayor and say, oh, well, I think there are enough safety nets, but okay, well, maybe we need some more safety nets, or maybe their safety nets should be more accessible. How useless is that? The Democrat added that the alleged perpetrator, quote, appears to have suffered a crisis. And there's the tiny Ukrainian arena, a tenth of a second before the cold steel of a knife plunged into her delicate throat. She claimed that Charlotte area transit systems, where the savage caught on video killing took place, is, quote, by and large, a safe transit system. Sickening. Video shows the anti-white terrorist, not madman, preparing to attack an unsuspecting Zarutska as she fiddled with her phone, earbuds in. We will never arrest our way out of issues such as homelessness and mental health. There's your argument from the anti-whites, Democrats, but the anti-white Republicans will entertain it. The Republicans will say, we need more arrests. But it's not going to help, because they're making new anti-white terrorists every day by the tens of thousands. You're not going to have enough buildings to house them all in and feed them and clothe them. But don't come to me with these childish conversations about, well, then what we should do is we should just ship them all over to Africa. All right, Bob. Are you done putting that drywall up? Because if you're not, you need to shut the fuck up and put the drywall up. She added that she is not villainizing those who struggle with their mental health or those who are unhoused. Another meme pathogen, unhoused. She said mental health, like schizophrenia, Brown was diagnosed with, needs to be treated with the same compassion. No, it needs to be treated with execution. The only way we're going to get to that is by becoming a people. Your fathers and mothers sat around and said, they need to be executed. Your grandfathers and grandmothers, they need to be executed. Your great grandfathers and grandmothers, they need to be executed. Are you seeing a pattern? Are you seeing the futility yet? Lyles didn't mention Brown or his career criminal status in her comments, which she concluded with a plea to do better for those members of our community who need help and have no place to go. So I believe this guy had lots of help. I believe he was given like 15 second chances, harming people and a second chance, harming more, victimizing more, second chance, 15 second chances. But the victim didn't get one, not 1 second chance at life. Murdered by anti-whiteism. Imagine a white race, a percentage of us, focusing on our individual well-being by way of our group well-being, being able to mobilize at a moment like this, confronting this mayor, marching in the town where this took place. Imagine that. Imagine the power of that, the transformative nature of that. Normal white people, not a bunch of angry guys throwing wild kicks like they're from some sort of B-level kung fu movie where they're all on crack. But normal, healthy white people. That's what it's going to take. Why aren't there white people out there? Why aren't we able to mobilize normal, healthy white people to be in the streets with their faces, with their arguments, with their license plate numbers? Why? Because to the white race, white lives don't matter. And to those who hate non-white peoples, why would you risk anything for them? You don't risk anything for what you hate. This is one of the most profound elements of psychological warfare that I don't know how everyone seems to miss, except for the people in this community. You do nothing. You risk nothing for that which you hate. You will risk everything for that which you love. Social media users ripped Lyle's statement to shreds. Charlotte Mayer should resign. Her number one role is to keep her people safe. Her people? This is insanity. Violent mentally people should be off the streets and in jail. A woman stabbed in the throat, and the mayor's response is more compassion for the attacker. Anti-whiteism gave you this aftermath. How about this anti-whiteism gave you? Here you have a TikToker, an anti-white black guy who has been making posts. He just made a new one today, I think. He plays music in the background rather than speak, writing the words on the screen, because of the idea that the algorithm won't be able to pick up what he's communicating. Responding to a comment, thoughts on DeCarlos Brown, the anti-white animal that savagely murdered Irina Zarutska. This guy posted, and by the way, I've been thrown off of TikTok several times. This is how anti-white TikTok can be. I've been thrown off several times for advocating for white well-being. This guy, though, can get on there and write that DeCarlos Brown is a natural response to 400 plus years of white oppression. Expect more just like him. Has he lost his account? I don't think so, because he was up to the same stuff again today, this anti-white pig. He's a consequence of anti-whiteism. Do you want to have a debate with him about whether or not the white race has been oppressing all of the white babies in the wombs today, or whether or not it's actually happened in history? Do you want to bother to have a debate with him? Do you want to have a conversation? Where do these notions come from? The anti-white narrative. Zarutska was taught the exact same narrative that this guy was taught. I'll also point out, as you so often will see, a consequence of biological white erasure are non-white people that hate the white race with a peculiar passion. It might be because, as you can see with this guy here, he has a lot of white genetic heritage in him. It might be because they're so close, but no cigar. Whatever it is, they have a peculiar, vehement hatred. Not all of them, of course, but a great many for the white race. So many of them call for, when they're not calling for the absolute extermination, the murder of white people, they're calling for the biological white erasure through miscegenation. They don't want there to be any white people since they can't be white. Common theme. Why isn't he being taken down? Anti-whiteism. Why does he have so many viewers on TikTok? Anti-whiteism. You think complaining about blacks is going to change that? You think ignoring the racial reality of our victimization in the mouths of these people and in their fists and in their genitals and etc. and in their minds, do you think that's going to fix anything? No. Here's Judge Teresa Stokes. She released DeCarlos Brown just months before he stabbed Zarutska because he wrote her a promise that he would be a good boy. Is that why she released him? She released him because of anti-whiteism. Because he's only harming white people. Because he's a member of the angelized, in the anti-white narrative, black race. Because he deserves to get back at the evil of the white race that the previous black, anti-white black TikToker was just talking about. That's why he was released. Conservatives, they're going to talk about how Stokes here is a homosexual and her homosexual partner owns a business where they rehab people who are released from prison. Naturally. We teach you about that in Go Free. Anti-whiteism with the individual begins with jealousy and envy. But where does it always reach over the course of their lives? Plunder and lust. Plunder and lust. So of course she's going to feed her financial enrichment with the ideological hatred of the white race. It's not done in the place of. It's not the main issue. It's not the real problem. The problem is endemic. The problem is ubiquitous. The problem is anti-whiteism. They don't all have spouses that own businesses, that rehab criminals, that rehab offenders, but they are all infected with anti-whiteism. Also been revealed that Stokes is not a lawyer. And there are many others who have no legal education and are serving as judges. A system I don't know the total history of, but of course was in place in our civilization because, pardon me, you don't have everybody able to go and to law school and learn law. And yet you have needs of people to sit in judgment. And when they have a narrow purview of what they can make a decision on, and the decision could be this or that, people can be taught that, they can fill those roles. Why are all of these roles filled with people other than white males? Competent white males. Why? Anti-whiteism. Not because they're black, but because they're not white. That's why they're in those roles. And specifically white male. So you have a anti-white savage animal terrorist who over the course of his life has been victimizing the community. Many of his victims, we don't know the exact numbers, are going to be white people. The 14 or 15 arrests and what ended up happening with him there are going to be a fraction of the overall injury that he's caused the community, white people, non-white people. He grows up hating the white race, viscerally hating them, instinctively maybe hating them, educationally hating them, and a system peopled by human beings that themselves are anti-white, who treat him like an aggrieved, injured victim of the white race. A system that's injuring him when they themselves, those anti-whites, are the system. Does that undermine their opinions? No. Because the reality that they've lived by way of entertainment is the reality that they're living their lives in, according to the subconscious. So it doesn't matter that they are the system, indeed, because the system is still victimizing young black males, for example. So released, handled with kid gloves again and again and again into the public to prey on the public, where he finds an anti-white Irina Zarutska, just getting off of her shift, working as a waitress, and stabs her to death. I told you, every aspect of this is anti-whiteism from start to finish. This is the report about Judge Stokes and her partner having a business making money. Consequence of anti-whiteism. Of course, people are going to make money off of anti-whiteism. Here this guy is again. And a little bit of a bigger image here for y'all to see. The Trump administration has just federally charged Irina Zarutska's murderer. He says killer, but murderer. Well, I guess he's going to say killer with murder, making him eligible for the death penalty. Not good enough. This notion that if it's incidentally good for us, then we should accept that. No. And I've seen a couple of Jews that orbit our community arguing that if something incidentally benefits white people, then you should be happy. No, that's conservatism. Absolutely not. That's abstractionism. incidentally benefiting us is not enough. We need to be named. Just like so many Jews demand to be named, we need to be named as the victims here. The totality of our people. Not be happy because it incidentally benefits us. Piss off with that. So this isn't good enough. I need to see hate crime charges. I need to see Pam Bondi talking about the anti-white nature of this attack. Just as these Jews would be demanding to hear about the anti-Jew nature of an attack where somebody is clearly harming a Jewish person because they're Jewish. CNN. So how does the media, of course, respond? We've talked about it in this anti-white world. Well, everywhere you look in the media, they didn't want to talk about it at all. And it was only because of all of the movement across of social media that they were forced to say something about it. CNN, just like the rest of mainstream media, is anti-white. Why? Because it's populated by anti-white employees, not because it has an anti-white owner. How the lives of a Ukrainian refugee and a Charlotte man with a criminal history converge in a fatal stabbing. Of course, they would devalue the life of this white female because she's white. Makes perfect sense when you understand that everybody working at CNN is anti-white, not just the owner. Here you have Donald Trump's response in The Tree Godfather, pointing out brilliantly about Trump. He never once mentioned she was murdered for being white. This ain't a W. Until he's ready to call this an anti-white terrorist attack, get effed with your manufactured victories. So what you had here that the Tree Godfather was brilliantly responding to is this anti-white piece of garbage passing himself off as some sort of nationalist, some sort of patriot, calls himself raw egg nationalist. And for years, he's got this picture of this handsome white guy flexing and being muscular and etc. in his avatar. And it was not that long ago that it was revealed that this is some scrawny, sickly looking non-white. And doesn't he live in the UK? Well, what does he say here to you white people? And this is the attempt by so many anti-whites like raw egg nationalists to vector off white people into another dead end, into another abstractionist dead end. It's all about the abstractions. They're going to toss in a little bit of philosophy. They're going to toss in a little bit of self-improvement, self-help, guru type of garbage. Toss in a little bit of eat right type of garbage and work out. And that's the new direction. This has been going on for years now, that they want to vector off so many white people who are getting interested in and angry about and searching for answers to what's happening. And here you have this non-white, anti-white parading around as though he's some fit white man. He's a sick looking, ugly as hell non-white. And he writes this. Trump comes out with a devastating statement about the murder of Irana's Zarutska. Another huge L for everybody who said Trump, quote, doesn't care about white people, close quote. I will also notice and point out that he wrote white with a lower case W. So he's trying to tell you all, oh no, it's all pro-white. Stop talking about it. Stop talking about it. It's a big win. Oh, it's an incidental win. Like we were just talking about it with some of the Jews that orbit this community and trying to drag people away from this community. It's another incidental win. Oh, it's a huge L for you if you don't think Trump is doing enough. Trump isn't doing enough until he says the problem is with anti-whiteism. You better believe that if it were a Jewess butchered in this rail car, he would absolutely call it out as anti-Jewism. I know what they call it. I'm going to call it what I call it. And why would that happen? Because they have a people. A percentage of their total population is a people, and they work together. That's why he would be calling it out. Well said here by Tree Godfather. And finally, we have this cuck that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Charlie Kirk's assassination. Insurrection Barbie. Another one of these MAGA type accounts that has over 1 million followers. And she says, don't let the media or anyone else bait you into a race war. This is not about race. This is about evil. God, I cannot tell you how sickening it is to hear this for the 10,000th time from another cuck. We're being victimized as a people, as individuals, because we indelibly belong to the group that is dehumanized and victimized. And even when the attackers outright say that they're doing it because we're white, you have these insufferable cuck scum show up and say, it has nothing to do with race. It's about evil. You're evil. We'll feed you to the evil. We'll feed you right to them. Because as soon as they see your white ass, they'll know what they want to do to you. You know damn well it has everything to do with race. Our race. You know, if this person is even actually white. And there's no telling anymore on the internet. No telling. You know damn well and good that if she's white, she's not going to go get out of a car in some El Salvadorian barrio in Florida. You know damn well she ain't going to get out of the car in Harlem, because it has everything to do with race, her race. This is about evil, and evil comes in all races and shapes and sizes. Isn't that the way you were talked to when you were in elementary school? This is definitely a female talking. The only us versus them is law-abiding citizens versus, law-abiding citizens versus criminals and the prosecutors and judges who empower them. Oh, no, it's not a multiracial resistance. That's not what it is. It's not a raceless, multiracial resistance. Non-white people are invited to join this racial resistance to our victimization and participate in contending with and pushing back and defeating anti-whiteism for the various reasons and motivators that could move a person to do such a thing. But this is very racial. I mean, this is what a great example of what the cuck garbage does. No, what we need is more. Remember, Oliver Anthony wrote a song for the white race and our victimization. And then what happens? When societal eyeballs go on him, he conforms to the societal morality, the social morality, which is the anti-white immoral imperative. And he says, no, what we need to do is be multiracial, not see race. It's us versus them, the cabal holders, the people in the cabal, the power hold. It's all of us little multiracial people, except that there has never been a country created by multiracial or resistance fought multiracially. Nothing like, no witch's cauldron of peoples can do anything except for drown in the stew of that poison. So this is what I wrote back to this insufferable garbage bitch. This revolting cuck garbage is half of what prevents whites from taking our own side in the defense of our people. Quote, oh, don't notice that we are targeted as white people because if we do, there might be a race war, close quote. If we don't notice, there'll be a race war. And the only side doing the fighting will be the anti-whites, which is kind of what we see today, isn't it? Kind of what you've seen your whole life. One side fighting this race war, and it's the anti-whites of all races against the white race. It's all about race, our race, the victims of societal blame, subway stabbings, gang rapes. Stop telling whites to not notice that we are victimized and targeted. Your cuck argument has presided over the entire collapse of the West. Go tell the Jews not to notice when they think that they're being attacked. Tell the blacks not to notice when they think they're being attacked. Because if you keep telling us, we'll know you for what you are, anti-white garbage. And you know what you do with the garbage? You take it out.